That cheap motel room had a smell I'll never forget. A mix of old cigarettes, cheap air freshener, and something else. Something like shame, sweat, and the kind of cologne a man wears when he thinks he's fooling everyone. The walls were thin. So thin I could hear the laughter before I even touched the doorknob. Her laugh, his voice, their little inside jokes like I had never existed. I stood there for a moment, frozen. My fingers cold even though it was nearly 90 degrees outside. Time didn't move. I didn't move. Not until I heard it. The sound of my husband, my partner of 14 years, calling her baby. That word, it snapped something inside me. Something that had been holding me together for too long. Something stitched together by forgiveness I never really meant and lies I forced myself to swallow. I turned the knob slowly. The door wasn't locked. Of course it wasn't. Why would it be? He didn't even try to hide it this time. He was sitting on the edge of the bed, shirt unbuttoned, belt undone, grinning like a boy caught stealing cookies instead of a grown man caught dismantling a family. She was younger, maybe 24, blonde hair, fake nails, the kind of woman I used to wonder if he dreamed about. Turns out, he didn't just dream. When he saw me, his smile didn't fade. Not at first. That's what stayed with me the most. Not the betrayal, not the other woman, but the look in his eyes, the absence of fear. He really thought I would just turn around and leave, like I had done before. Like every time I caught a whiff of perfume that wasn't mine on his shirt. Like when I found hotel receipts or late-night messages from numbers saved as Carlos or plumbing guy. But this time, I didn't turn away. My voice didn't rise. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stared. Quiet. Still. There was this buzzing in my ears, like the sound of 1,000 bees trapped inside my skull. I could see everything. Every detail. The way the curtains didn't reach the floor, the stained carpet, the dent on the lampshade, her legs crossed, uncomfortable now. Him shifting, finally registering that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't walking away this time. My hand went into my coat pocket. I had forgotten the tube was even there. Super glue. I had picked it up that morning to fix a broken drawer in the kitchen. But in that moment, it became something else. Not a weapon, not revenge, just an impulse. An action I didn't think through. My body moved before my mind caught up. I walked across the room slowly, not breaking eye contact. He stood up halfway, trying to speak, maybe to explain, maybe to lie again. But I was already uncapping the glue, and then I reached for his pants. He flinched, pulled back, but not fast enough. I squeezed the tube, and the cold liquid oozed over the metal zipper. Thick, clear, sticky. I pressed it shut with the palm of my hand, and then I left, just like that. No words, no chaos, no violence, just silence. Outside, the sun hit my face like I had been underwater for years and was just now surfacing. My hands were shaking, but I didn't feel panic. I felt stillness, peace almost. I sat in the car and watched the door, waited. 10 minutes passed, then 15, and then I saw him rush out, hunched over, limping, trying to keep his pants from pulling on his skin. The girl was gone. He was alone, clutching at his zipper like it was eating him alive. And in a way, it was. The next hours passed in a blur. I went home, took a long shower, boiled water for tea but never drank it. I just stood in the kitchen, barefoot on the cold tile floor, staring at the steam rising, thinking, is this how it ends? Is this how I finally get out? I didn't sleep that night, not because I was afraid of what I had done, but because, for the first time, I wasn't afraid of him. You don't understand unless you've lived it. Unless you've kissed a man goodnight after smelling another woman on his breath. Unless you've found strands of unfamiliar hair on the pillow next to you and told yourself it must be yours. Unless you've deleted messages he never even tried to hide, just to keep the peace, to keep the house quiet, to keep the family intact. Unless you've cried silently in the shower with your hand over your mouth so the kids don't hear. If you know that kind of pain, the slow kind, the quiet kind, the one that erodes who you are inch by inch, then maybe, just maybe, you'll understand why a woman like me in a motel like that, with a man like him, finally snapped. And it didn't feel like snapping. It felt like surviving. I didn't want to ruin him. I didn't want to cause pain. I just wanted him to stop. I wanted the lies to stop, the humiliation, the loneliness inside a marriage, the feeling of being invisible even while cooking his dinner, even while folding his socks, even while lying next to him, pretending not to hear the ping of his phone under the pillow at 2 a.m. It wasn't about glue. It was about dignity. Mine. And when the phone started ringing the next morning, I knew the story had already begun to spread. People laugh at women like me. They make jokes. She glued his zipper shut. She must be crazy. But none of them asked what came before that moment. None of them saw the years that built up to it, the quiet swallowing of pain, the smiling through betrayal, the praying at church while knowing your husband was in another woman's bed. And if you're still here, still listening, maybe you're like me. Maybe you've been silent for too long. If you have, I want you to say it out loud, even if it's just in the comments. My silence ends here. Because this story isn't just mine. It's 1,000 women's stories rolled into one. And it's far from over. We still have a long way to go. But for now, I just want to know. Have you ever stayed silent for the sake of someone who didn't deserve it? Tell me in the comments. Just write, I matter more. Your story, your voice, can help another woman feel less alone. And that's how we begin to break the cycle. Together. My name is Eliane Ramos. I'm 39 years old, born in Brazil, but I've lived in Newark, New Jersey for almost 15 years now. I came here chasing a dream like everyone else, believing that if I worked hard, stayed honest, loved deeply, and endured long enough, somehow I'd be rewarded with peace, a home, a real family, not just in photos, not just in public smiles, but a family that felt safe, even behind closed doors. Most days, I work at St. Vincent's Hospital, cleaning rooms, changing sheets, sanitizing surfaces that most people never even think about. I wear white shoes that squeak on the tile floor. I carry a small bag of supplies and try to smile at every patient, even the ones who don't see me. I'm good at disappearing, always have been. That's probably why it took me so long to see how much of myself I had already lost. I wasn't always this woman, the one who glued her husband's zipper shut. I used to be soft, tender, a bit naive maybe. I believed in romance, in the promises of a man who said he'd never hurt me. We met at a cousin's barbecue. He had this way of making you feel like you were the only one in the world. That kind of charm that wears off slowly, like sugar on your tongue. Sweet at first, then it turns your stomach. We moved in together after just 4 months. He told me he couldn't live without me. And I wanted to be needed. It felt like love, or maybe I needed it to be. We got married the following year. I wore a second-hand dress, and my sister braided my hair. It was simple, humble, but I was proud. I thought, this is the beginning of something sacred. God, how wrong I was. The cracks started showing early, but I kept painting over them, like the walls of our little apartment. Every time something chipped, I found a way to make it look okay. Every time he stayed out late, I convinced myself he was tired, that he needed space, that I was the one asking too much. He never hit me, not with fists. His weapons were silence, sarcasm, distance. He'd disappear for a weekend and come back smelling like hotels and other women, and I'd cook dinner anyway. I remember one night in particular. It was winter. The boys were already asleep. I had made stroganoff, his favorite. He walked in at almost midnight, lips chapped from the cold, and he kissed me on the cheek like nothing had happened, like he hadn't ignored 20 of my calls. I didn't even ask where he'd been. I just heated up the food and served it. That was the night I realized I had become a ghost in my own home, just floating, quiet, invisible. We had 2 boys, Matthias and Caio. They were my world, still are. I stayed for them. I thought, maybe if I endure a little more, they'll grow up with both parents. Maybe love is about holding on, not walking away. Maybe he'll change. But time taught me something else entirely. Love without respect is just slow suicide. And I was dying a little every day. He'd always been careful at first. The affairs were whispers, accidental receipts in his jeans, the occasional lipstick stain I pretended not to see. But after a while, he stopped pretending. He stopped lying. He knew I wouldn't leave. I had no one here. No family close enough to run to. no savings, no green card. And so he owned me, not with chains, but with circumstances. That's how men like him operate. They make you feel like you're lucky to be chosen, even when you're being destroyed. There was a day, I remember, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror brushing my teeth, and I didn't recognize myself. My eyes looked hollow. My skin looked tired. I whispered, "Where did you go?" As if the woman I used to be could somehow answer back. But there was no answer. Just the sound of a man snoring in the next room. The same man who had left a voicemail from another woman on his phone and laughed when I found it. Still, I stayed. Because trauma teaches you that survival means silence. Because when you grow up watching women stay, you think leaving is the betrayal, not the cheating, not the gaslighting, not the emotional neglect, but the act of walking away. That's what they say. She ruined the marriage. Not him. Never him. So I made myself small. I focused on the boys. I worked overtime. I smiled at church. I cooked his meals. I made excuses for his absences. I accepted apologies that never came, and I lost myself in the process. But the truth is, even ghosts get tired. That's why, when I saw him in that motel room, smiling, shirt open, sitting on the bed like he hadn't just broken the last piece of me, I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't crumble. I acted, quietly, instinctively, like a woman who's been pushed to the edge and finally lets go. What I did wasn't planned. It wasn't righteous. It wasn't even dramatic. It was survival in its rawest form. It was the last cry of a woman who had been invisible for too long. He thought I was weak. He thought I wouldn't do anything. He thought he could keep taking and taking and taking. But even the quiet ones snap. Even the invisible ones bleed. Even women like me, who sweep floors and wipe down hospital trays and take care of everyone else before themselves, reach a point where we say, enough. And maybe, just maybe, that motel room was my turning point. Not because of the glue, but because of what it symbolized. For the first time in years, I chose myself. If you've ever been made to feel like you don't matter, like your pain is too small, your voice too soft, your story too shameful to be heard, I want you to say it out loud. Right here, right now. I deserve better. And if you're afraid to say it, write it in the comments. You can just put, "My silence stops now." Because the truth is, healing begins when we stop hiding. And I'm not hiding anymore. Before the glue, before the motel, before that cold silence in the car ride home, there were years of quiet suffering that nobody ever saw. The truth is, the first betrayal didn't start with another woman's perfume. It didn't start with a late-night text, or the way he suddenly started hiding his phone screen when I walked into the room. It started long before that, with a glance, a shift in tone, a cold shoulder, and I ignored it, because we're trained to. As women, we're taught to be the glue. Hold the house together, keep the peace, don't ask too many questions, don't push too hard, smile, pray, wait, be patient, be grateful. And I was. God knows I was. I was patient when the bills piled up and he didn't come home. I was patient when he forgot my birthday 2 years in a row. I was patient when I heard the name Sabrina whispered in his sleep, even though I didn't know a single Sabrina. I was patient when he said he needed space, when he said I was too needy, when he said I was too emotional. I was patient when he blamed me for his distance, when he said I'd changed, that I wasn't fun anymore, as if carrying the weight of our home, our kids, and my full-time job made me any less of a woman. But it didn't matter. No matter how much I gave, he wanted more. And no matter how much he took, I stayed. At first, I told myself it was for the kids. I convinced myself they needed both parents, that they would suffer if I walked away. But children aren't blind. They feel tension. They hear what we think they don't. I remember Kaio, he was just 7, once asked me, "Mommy, why do you look sad even when you're smiling?" That question broke something in me, because I realized my silence wasn't protecting them. It was teaching them that this was normal, that love meant pain, that marriage was a sentence you served, not a partnership you built, that mothers endure and fathers disappear, that women clean up the messes and men never say sorry. I thought about my own mother, How she used to sit in the kitchen long after dinner was over, staring into a cup of tea that had gone cold. My father wasn't cruel, not in obvious ways, but he made her feel small, like her opinions didn't matter, like her dreams were childish. He used to pat her head like she was a little girl instead of the woman who gave him 3 children and 20 years of her life. And she stayed, just like I did. We inherit pain like it's family jewelry, passed down from generation to generation, not because we want it, but because no one taught us how to break the chain. And so I found myself replaying their story with different faces and the same ending. He would come home smelling like someone else's body, and I would wash the sheets in silence. He would leave on Friday nights with vague excuses, and I would sit on the couch pretending I wasn't waiting for the sound of his key in the door. He would delete his messages and forget to clear the call logs, and I would tell myself it wasn't proof, just paranoia. But it was proof. I knew it. I just didn't want to believe it, because believing it meant I had to do something. And doing something meant disrupting the illusion I had built. And that illusion was the only thing keeping me sane. I remember one Sunday, after church, I found a receipt in his jeans. A hotel just outside the city. 2 nights. A minibar charge. And something deep in my stomach flipped. It wasn't rage. It wasn't even sadness. It was shame. Shame for loving someone who made me feel disposable. Shame for still cooking his meals, folding his clothes, kissing his cheek. Shame for choosing him over myself. But even then, I stayed. Because the idea of starting over felt heavier than staying broken. And honestly, I didn't know who I was without him. That's the part no one talks about. How abuse doesn't always look like bruises. Sometimes it looks like forgetting your favorite color. Like not knowing what music you like anymore because you spent so long playing what he liked. It looks like standing in a grocery store aisle, paralyzed because you don't even know what cereal you want. Because for years, you bought what he wanted. It looks like saying, "I'm fine," so many times that even you believe it. I wasn't fine. I was lost. I was lonely, even while lying next to someone. And I was tired. Tired of pretending. Tired of shrinking. Tired of giving. Tired of hoping. Tired of covering for him at school meetings. He's working late, I'd say, when really he was out with someone else. Tired of lying to the boys. "Dad loves you very much," I'd whisper, even though he forgot Kaio's last 2 birthdays and only showed up for Matthias's soccer games when he knew other parents would be watching. Tired of waiting for a man who stopped choosing me long ago. But I was also scared. Because what would people say? What would church say? What would my neighbors say? They would say I failed, that I broke my family, that I was bitter, that I must have pushed him away. And I believed them. Because women are always the ones to blame when things fall apart. Nobody asks, "What did he do?" They ask, "Why didn't she keep him happy?" And that kind of thinking keeps us stuck. Stuck in marriages that hollow us out. Stuck in homes that don't feel safe. Stuck in roles we never asked for. I didn't want to be a victim, but I also didn't want to be the villain. So I stayed in this gray area, this half-life, where I was never fully happy, but just happy enough to keep going. Until one day, I wasn't. Until one day, I looked in the mirror and said, "No more." If any of this sounds like you, if you've ever kept quiet to keep the peace, if you've ever apologized for someone else's cruelty, I want you to comment. This stops with me. And if you've ever lost yourself in someone else's shadow, write, "I'm ready to come back to life." Because every comment is more than a word. It's a voice. And when we speak, we remind each other that silence doesn't protect us. It imprisons us. And it's time to break free. It happened so fast and yet felt like it lasted an eternity. That moment, in that room, with that woman I didn't know and the man I thought I did, I still can't tell if I lost my mind or found it. All I know is, something inside me shifted. Something final, permanent. And it didn't feel like rage. It felt like clarity. He stood there with that arrogant smile that had gotten away with too much for too long. His belt was undone, pants half-zipped, and he was still laughing, like the entire thing was some joke, like my presence didn't mean anything, like I wasn't the mother of his children, like I hadn't sacrificed my body, my dreams, my peace, for him. And she looked at me like I was an inconvenience, just another wife who walked in too soon. She didn't say sorry, didn't even flinch. She just sat on the bed, eyes blank, waiting for me to break, waiting for the drama, the screaming, the slapping, the chaos. But I didn't give them that. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I didn't fall to my knees and beg to know why her. I already knew the answer. It was never about her. It was about him, about how little he thought of me, how much he believed I'd take, how sure he was that I would turn around, drive home, and pretend this never happened. Again. But not this time. This time, I was done playing the good wife, the calm one, the forgiving one. I was done being the doormat in a story that belonged to me. My hand went into my pocket. That moment still so vivid, the way my fingers brushed against the cold little tube, the way it stuck slightly to the lining of my coat, as if it had been waiting there all day for this exact moment. I had bought it that morning at the dollar store. I was going to fix the kitchen drawer that wouldn't close properly. Funny, right? I had spent all these years trying to fix things that kept falling apart, and now I was holding the very thing that would make sure he never forgot me. He saw it in my hand but didn't react. He was too arrogant, too used to my silence, too used to me crying in the other room while he slept soundly after breaking me in half. I walked up to him, slow, deliberate, and for once, he didn't move. He just looked confused, a little amused even. He opened his mouth like he was going to say something, maybe apologize, maybe lie. But I didn't give him the chance. I reached down, pressed the zipper of his pants together with one hand, took the cap off the super bonder with the other, and squeezed. The cold, thick glue soaked the metal teeth and began to set almost instantly. It oozed into the fabric. I could feel it on my fingertips. Sticky, chemical, sharp. The smell burned my nose. And still, I didn't speak. I pressed the zipper shut, hard, holding it there for a few seconds. Long enough for it to seal, long enough for him to realize this wasn't a joke. That's when he moved. He jumped back, hands grabbing at his crotch, his face twisting in panic. "What the hell is wrong with you?" he yelled. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I turned around, walked to the door, and left. No drama, no explanation, just silence. I could hear him cursing behind me, the sound of a man trying to undo what he thought he had control over. But this time, he didn't. Outside, the air hit me like a slap. The sun was too bright, the wind too cold. It was like stepping out of a dream, only I wasn't sure if I had just woken up or fallen deeper into one. I got in the car. My hands trembled on the steering wheel. My heart was beating so hard I thought it might break through my chest, but I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, breathing, letting the reality settle. I had done something irreversible, something that couldn't be explained away or undone with an apology. And yet, for the first time in years, I didn't feel helpless. I didn't feel small. I felt like I had taken my power back, back from the years I had lost, back from the nights I had waited up for him, back from the mornings I had pretended nothing was wrong so the kids wouldn't worry, back from the silence that had swallowed me whole. As I drove home, my phone vibrated again and again. Calls, texts. I didn't answer any of them. I didn't even look. I knew what they were. I knew the chaos I had left behind. And honestly, I didn't care. When I got home, I locked the door behind me, walked to the bathroom, and scrubbed my hands for what felt like forever. The smell of the glue was still there, lingering. And even though I knew it wasn't on my skin anymore, I could still feel it. I sat on the edge of the tub, towel wrapped around my hands, staring at the floor. Not crying, just breathing. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about him. It was about me. About the version of me that had been screaming from the inside, begging to be heard, begging to matter. And finally, I had listened. Some people will say I went too far, that I lost control. But what they don't understand is that it wasn't about hurting him. It was about stopping the hurt in me. I had been hurting for so long. I had been swallowing every insult, every betrayal, every time he walked past me like I was furniture, every time he forgot I was a person with feelings, every time he told me I was overreacting, that I was imagining things, that I was crazy, and maybe I did go a little crazy, but not in the way they think. Not in the way that makes you dangerous, in the way that makes you free. The kind of madness that comes after years of being sane for everyone else. Years of playing your part so well you forgot it was a performance. Years of being the peacemaker, the nurturer, the fixer, the forgiver. And for what? So he could lie to my face and laugh behind my back? No, not anymore. So when I tell this part of the story, people always ask, did I regret it? But that's not the question they should be asking. The real question is, why did it take me so long? And maybe you're asking yourself the same thing right now. Maybe you've stayed silent too long. Maybe you've let someone cross lines they had no right to touch. Maybe you've convinced yourself that survival means silence. But let me tell you something. Silence is a slow death. And if you're still here, if you're still listening, I want you to write this in the comments, just to yourself, just to remind your soul. I am done staying quiet. Or, if it's still hard to say it, just type, no more. Sometimes that's all it takes. One word, one voice, one moment, and everything begins to change. The next morning, the silence was different. It wasn't peaceful anymore. It wasn't mine. It was loud, the kind of silence that crawls under your skin and makes everything feel too still, like the world is holding its breath, waiting to see what happens next. And that's exactly how it felt. Like something had shifted in the air, and I didn't know what would come crashing down first. Him, me, or everything around us. I didn't check the news. I didn't open my texts. I didn't go on social media. I just kept my routine. Got the boys ready for school, packed their lunches, tied Kaio's shoelaces. They didn't notice anything different. Or maybe they did and were too afraid to ask. Either way, I was quiet. But it wasn't the same kind of quiet as before. This quiet felt heavier, like something was building. I got to the hospital early that day. I had a shift in the East Wing. I clocked in, grabbed my cart, tied my apron like always. Just another Wednesday. That's what I told myself. Just another day of making beds, mopping floors, changing linens, wiping down machines that beep like broken promises. Only this time, something was off. I passed two nurses whispering in the hallway. One of them looked at me, then quickly looked away. The other laughed behind her hand. My stomach turned. I brushed it off. People always talk, but the way they looked at me, it wasn't just curiosity, it was recognition. By lunchtime, 3 more people had given me that same look, and that's when I heard it. In the staff lounge, someone had left the radio on. A local news segment was playing. I wasn't paying much attention, just trying to eat my sandwich in peace. But then I heard it, the words super glue and motel in the same sentence. My chest went cold. The reporter's voice was casual, almost amused, as he described a bizarre incident involving a man brought to the emergency room in a rather compromising situation. No names were mentioned. No details I hadn't lived, but it didn't matter. I knew, and now, so did everyone else. The room got quiet. Then someone snorted. Another person chuckled, and I sat there, chewing slowly, like nothing had changed, but everything had. Later that afternoon, I saw him. They brought him in through the back entrance, on a wheelchair. He was pale, sweating, wearing hospital-issued scrubs. His face was a mix of pain and humiliation. I was standing by the nurse's station, holding a fresh sheet, when he spotted me. Our eyes met for less than a second. But in that second, I saw it all. His rage, his shame, his fear, and behind all of it, something else. Something small and pathetic. Powerlessness. For the first time, he wasn't in control. He wasn't the one walking in late with lipstick on his collar. He wasn't the one brushing off my questions or rolling his eyes when I cried. He was the one being looked at, the one being laughed at. I didn't flinch. I just turned away. Later that night, I heard one of the doctors talking about the case. They thought it was a prank. That poor guy, they said. His wife glued his pants shut. They had to call in a specialist. And then the laughter came again. But not mean laughter. That kind of awkward, what the hell is this world coming to? Laughter. They didn't know it was me. Not yet. But word was spreading. By the end of the week, it was everywhere. Instagram reels, Twitter threads, Facebook gossip groups. People were making memes, jokes, hashtags. Zippergate, someone called it. One of the hospital interns even showed me a TikTok where a girl reenacted the entire scene with a toy doll and superglue. I laughed. But not because it was funny. I laughed because it was easier than screaming, because while the internet was entertained, I was unraveling. Not because I regretted what I did, but because I didn't know who I was anymore. I wasn't the wife. I wasn't the victim. I wasn't even the woman who walked away. I had become a story, a headline, a punchline. And nobody knew the real me. Nobody knew about the years I spent hiding bruises that weren't on my body, but on my soul. The nights I fell asleep holding his phone in my hands, wondering why he didn't love me enough to stop. The birthdays I spent alone. The anniversaries I cooked for two, then ate alone while he worked late. Nobody knew the therapy I had started in secret 6 months ago. The panic attacks. The moments where I'd stare at my reflection and wonder if I even deserved better. Nobody knew the nights I came home from the hospital and cried on the kitchen floor because I couldn't make the math work, couldn't make ends meet, couldn't make sense of why I was still trying to hold a broken thing together. And now I was the woman who glued her husband's zipper shut. That was it. That was my identity. Even strangers at the grocery store started whispering. Some looked at me with pity, others with admiration, a few with judgment. One woman even approached me in the frozen food aisle and said, "Girl, you're my hero," before disappearing around the corner. Hero? No. I wasn't brave. I was tired. I wasn't fearless. I was done being scared. But more than anything, I was alone. Because even after all that noise, no one had asked the most important question. No one had asked, "What made you do it?" Because if they had, maybe they would have learned the truth, that it wasn't about glue. It was about grief. Grieving the version of me that stayed too long. Grieving the love I never received. Grieving the time I lost waiting for a man who never planned to show up for me. And the shame. God. The shame of knowing I had become a joke when I was just trying to survive. But maybe that's how it works. Maybe survival doesn't look like strength. Maybe it looks like a mistake. Like a story no one understands. Like a zipper sealed shut with years of silence. If you've ever felt the world laughing at your pain, if you've ever had your truth turned into a joke, I want you to comment below. They didn't see what I survived. Or if you've ever had to carry something alone and it almost broke you, just type, "No one knew." Because sometimes the comments we leave behind are the only pieces of our truth that get heard. The thing about a story like mine is, it doesn't stay small, especially in a place like ours, where people still hang their laundry outside, where the corner store cashier knows your kids' birthdays, and where gossip spreads faster than wildfire on dry brush. It's the kind of town where people say "bless you" when they mean "I'm watching," where kindness comes with a side of judgment, and your reputation is often decided by the loudest mouth, not the truest voice. At first, it was just whispers. The kind that float behind you in a room, soft enough to be deniable, but loud enough to hear. I'd walk into the post office and feel it, that sudden hush, the weight of eyes pretending not to look. I'd hear my name stretched out too long in a sentence. Elaine, right? The one who, followed by an awkward laugh, a side glance, and then silence. Then came the stares. More direct, less shy. In the supermarket, at the gas station, in the church hallway after service. People looked at me the way you'd look at a car wreck, shocked, curious, disgusted, impressed. A mix of emotions they didn't know how to name. And maybe they didn't want to. Maybe it was easier to just reduce me to the label they'd given me. The woman with the glue, the crazy one, the angry wife, the woman who finally lost it. The story had become bigger than me. It wasn't about the years I endured. It wasn't about the emotional abuse, the infidelities, the gaslighting. It was about a moment. One moment. And they clung to that moment like it defined me completely. Like everything that came before and after didn't matter. Some people laughed, some people judged, and some, they cheered. I remember walking past a group of teenagers outside the pharmacy. One of them shouted, "Hey lady, what kind of glue was it?" His friends burst into laughter. I didn't say a word, just kept walking, but my hands were shaking. Another time, a woman I barely knew, just someone from church, stopped me outside the bakery and whispered, "Honestly, good for you. I wish I had your courage." Then she looked around nervously and hurried off like she was afraid of being seen with me. It was surreal, to be both villain and hero, both feared and admired, but never understood. Even my own family didn't know what to do with me. My sister called from Florida, her voice tight, unsure. "Eliane, I saw something online. Is it true?" When I said yes, she didn't say anything for a few seconds. Then, finally, "You should have just left him. Just left." As if leaving were that simple. As if the years I'd spent wrapped in survival mode hadn't worn me down so much that leaving felt harder than staying. As if the kids, the rent, the fear of judgment, the fear of being alone, the years of gaslighting and broken apologies didn't make walking away feel like climbing Everest barefoot. It's easy to say just leave when you're watching from the outside. It's easy to talk about boundaries and self-respect when you haven't had your worth slowly chipped away one cruel word at a time. But the thing is, what happened wasn't just about him or me. It was about all the women who saw themselves in my story. All the women who had swallowed pain for so long they forgot how to speak, who stayed up at night rehearsing conversations they never had, who Googled how to know if he's cheating at 2 a.m. and deleted the search history like it was a sin. And now, suddenly, I was a mirror. A messy, cracked mirror, but a mirror nonetheless. Women started messaging me, some anonymous, some brave enough to say their names. "You did what I never had the guts to do," one woman wrote. "I stayed too, and he still left me. You're not crazy. You're free." But with that came the other side too. Men calling me bitter. Strangers telling me I was abusive. Someone even sent me a message saying I deserved jail. And maybe they were right, depending on who you ask. Because when a woman breaks the mold society puts her in, she's always either a cautionary tale or a mad woman. There's no room for nuance. No space for the possibility that sometimes women snap not because they're unstable, but because they've been too stable for too long. Because we've been raised to endure, not to resist, to please, not to protect. And when we stop doing that, the world panics. They don't know what to do with a woman who says, "No more." I think what shocked people the most wasn't what I did, but the fact that I didn't cry about it. That I didn't go on the news begging for forgiveness, that I didn't show up to church with my head bowed and my mouth shut. I showed up with my chin up. I kept my routine. I held my head high even when I wanted to disappear. Because if I was going to be a story, I was going to be the one who told it, not them, not the internet, not the gossip blogs or the judgmental aunties. Me. I decided that if they were going to talk, they were going to get the full picture, not just the punchline. And so I started talking too, not to everyone, not all at once, but to the women who reached out, to the friends who looked at me not with judgment, but with softness, to myself in the mirror each morning. I started saying things like, "You're not crazy. You didn't imagine it. You're not alone." Because I wasn't. And if you're still listening, maybe you're not either. Maybe you've felt the eyes on you, the whispers, the blame. Maybe you've had people reduce your pain to gossip. Maybe your survival has been turned into entertainment. And if that's the case, I want you to comment below. I know how that feels. Or just write, "I won't let them rewrite my story." Because that's what we're doing here. Taking back our narrative, one word at a time. People keep asking why I did it. Not just strangers online. Not just co-workers or family members. But even women like me, ask it in whispers. Sometimes with a glimmer of curiosity in their voice, sometimes with fear, like they're afraid of how close they are to understanding. Like they know they're only one betrayal away from doing something similar. And the truth is, I don't have a clean answer. There was no plan, no calculation, no master revenge fantasy I had been nurturing for years. I didn't wake up that morning thinking, "Today I'm going to snap." No, I woke up like any other day, tired, anxious, worn out by the weight of carrying a love that had already died. I made breakfast for the kids, I packed lunches, I double-knotted Kaio's shoes and kissed Matthias's forehead before school. I reminded myself to pick up groceries and maybe finally fix the kitchen drawer that had been sticking for weeks. That's why I bought the glue, just for the drawer. There was no darkness in me that morning, only the same emptiness that had become normal. It wasn't rage that drove me. It was silence. Years and years of silence that I had dressed up as patience. That's the part no one wants to hear. Because we love stories with heroes and villains. We love clean lines, neat boxes. A woman who glues her husband's zipper shut? That must mean she's crazy, dangerous, unhinged. But if you looked deeper, if you peeled back the layers of me, you'd find something terrifying. Not madness, not evil, but exhaustion. An exhaustion so deep it made me forget who I was. You see, when you're hurt over and over, and the world tells you to keep smiling, you start to believe the pain isn't real. You tell yourself, it could be worse. You start grading your suffering on a curve. You say, at least he doesn't hit me, as if emotional abandonment isn't violence. You say, at least he comes home eventually, even when he's coming back from another woman's bed. I said those things. I told myself those lies because they were easier to hold than the truth, that I was being erased, bit by bit, word by word, lie by lie, until one day I wasn't sure who I was anymore outside of him. So when I found myself in that motel room, staring at him, laughing like none of it mattered, like he'd gotten away with it again, something inside me cracked, not loud like thunder, but quiet like glass breaking under your feet. And when my fingers closed around that glue in my pocket, it wasn't revenge, it wasn't violence, it was a decision, a line in the sand. I didn't want to harm him. I wanted him to feel the panic I had lived with for years. That's what people don't understand. The real punishment wasn't the glue, it was the loss of control. He had controlled everything for so long. He controlled when he left and when he came back. He controlled the narrative. He made me feel guilty for questioning him, made me feel small for having needs, made me feel dramatic for crying, made me feel stupid for loving him. But in that moment, for the first time, he wasn't the one in control. I was. And it wasn't glorious. It wasn't some empowering victory dance. It was messy, unplanned, desperate, but it was mine. It was the first thing I had done in years that was truly mine. Do I regret it? Not really, because in that single act, however unhinged it may seem, I reclaimed something I had long forgotten, my right to respond. We're told to be calm, to be rational, to handle things with grace, especially as women, especially as wives, especially as mothers. We're expected to swallow betrayal with a smile and serve dinner anyway. We're told to think of the kids, to not make a scene, to walk away quietly for the sake of dignity. But what about our sanity? What about the nights we lie awake replaying every conversation? What about the stomach knots, the chest tightness, the tears we cry in locked bathrooms? Why does no one talk about the years stolen by men who treat loyalty like a guarantee and women like furniture? I was never violent, but I was desperate. And desperation doesn't follow rules. It doesn't wait its turn. It doesn't make nice. It erupts. I think a lot of women live at the edge of that eruption. We smile in grocery stores, we answer emails, we iron uniforms, and inside we're screaming. But no one hears us until we do something crazy. And then suddenly, we're unstable, we're hysterical, we're too emotional. But not once did anyone stop to ask what made us that way, what broke us, what wore us down until our only language left was action. The glue wasn't about pain, it was about being seen. And finally, I was seen. Not as his wife, not as a mother, not as the woman who stayed, but as a human being with limits. I don't need people to understand why I did it, but I need them to understand what came before it. Because when you ignore a woman's pain long enough, she will find a way to speak. And sometimes that voice comes out in the most unexpected forms. If you've ever reached your breaking point, if you've ever made a decision that didn't make sense to anyone but felt like survival to you, if you've ever been labeled too much when all you were was finally enough for yourself, I want you to say it. Say it in the comments. I'm not crazy. I was hurting. Or just right, now I understand myself. Because maybe, just maybe, when we say it out loud, the shame starts to disappear. I thought it would end there. That after the glue, after the hospital, after the whispers and the viral posts, and the burning shame and strange applause, that it would all just fade. that he'd slink away, too humiliated to fight, too exposed to retaliate, that maybe, just maybe, he'd leave me alone for good. But that's not how it works. Men like him don't like losing control. They can cheat, lie, manipulate, disappear for days, drain you emotionally, wear you down to the bone. But the moment you take back even an inch of power, they want blood. It was about a week after the incident when I got the letter. It wasn't fancy. Just a plain white envelope slipped into my mailbox, addressed by hand. No return address. I opened it slowly, already feeling the tight pull in my stomach, like my body knew before my mind did. Inside was a formal notice. He was pressing charges. Assault, intentional harm, psychological distress resulting from malicious bodily injury. He was going after me, not just in the public eye, but in court. I sat at my kitchen table with the paper in my hand, reading the words over and over. My breath got shallow. My palms went cold. My ears started ringing. It felt like the world tipped sideways. He was the one who cheated. He was the one who humiliated me, gaslighted me, emotionally neglected me for years. And now I was the criminal? I should have expected it. I should have known better. But I didn't. Part of me still thought there were limits, that even he had a line. But no, when a man like that feels his ego wounded, he doesn't just heal, he retaliates. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't afford a lawyer. I barely had enough to cover rent that month. I'd already taken a few shifts off after everything blew up, and the hospital hours weren't forgiving. Every time I walked into work, it felt like everyone was watching me. Not out of concern, just curiosity. I didn't have family nearby, no one to lean on, no one to bail me out if this turned serious. I felt trapped all over again. That same old feeling, cornered, alone, powerless. But something in me had changed. The same woman who had stood quietly in the shadows all those years. She wasn't running this time. I walked straight into the hospital's legal clinic after my shift and asked to speak to someone. Anyone. I didn't care if they believed me. I just needed help. I sat there in the waiting area, holding that letter like it was a grenade, praying someone would see past the headline version of me. That's when I met him. Marcus, a junior attorney with warm eyes and a calm voice. He looked tired, like someone who had read too many files and listened to too many stories. But when he asked me what happened, he actually listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't raise an eyebrow when I told him about the glue. He didn't make me feel insane. He asked me about the marriage, about the patterns, about the years before that motel room. He asked me things no one else had cared to know. "Was this the first time he hurt you?" he said. And I laughed, a dry, bitter sound. "He never hit me," I replied. "That's not what I asked." That was the first time I broke down. In a tiny office that smelled like printer ink and coffee, I let the dam burst. I told him everything, about the cheating, the manipulation, the guilt, the fear, the loneliness, the countless times I tried to speak and was silenced, the moments I wanted to leave but felt like I couldn't afford to, the time I asked him to go to therapy with me and he laughed in my face. Marcus listened. And then he leaned forward and said something that made me feel like the ground was finally steady under my feet. "You're not crazy, and you're not a criminal. You're a survivor." He agreed to represent me, pro bono, no hesitation. And just like that, for the first time in this entire storm, I didn't feel alone. We built my case slowly. He asked me for messages, voicemails, emails, anything that showed a pattern. I had deleted most of it over the years, out of shame, out of a desperate attempt to pretend everything was okay. But there were a few things left, enough to paint a picture, enough to show what kind of man he really was when no one was watching. Marcus called it a defense of emotional distress, said we could argue coercive control, psychological harm, long-term mental and emotional abuse. He said this wasn't about a zipper. It was about years of silence that ended in a single act of desperation. And still, I was scared. Because this wasn't just a courtroom fight. This was my life on trial, my pain, my sanity, my motherhood, my worth. He would say I was unfit, that I was unstable, that I was a danger. And people, especially men, would believe him. Because that's the world we live in. A woman raises her voice, and suddenly she's irrational, emotional, hysterical. But I didn't raise my voice. I acted. And now I had to explain it to people who had never been pushed that far, who had never had their dignity peeled away one layer at a time until nothing was left but a woman standing in front of a man who thought she'd never have the courage to push back. I wasn't seeking justice. I was defending myself. And I wish I could say I wasn't terrified, but I was. Terrified of being misunderstood. Terrified of losing my kids. Terrified of going from the woman people whispered about to the woman people pitied. But Marcus looked at me one night as we sat in his office late, going over the final notes, and said, "You're not the worst thing you've done. You're everything you've survived." That stayed with me. It still does. If you've ever been blamed for finally breaking, if you've ever had to defend yourself for reacting to pain you were never allowed to speak about, if you've ever felt like the world only sees the moment you fought back, but not the years you endured in silence, say something. Say it in the comments. Just write, "They only saw the explosion, not the fire that built it." Or if that feels like too much, just type, "I had my reasons." Because we all do. I was back at work the day it happened. After everything, the legal papers, the media storm, the whispers and stares, I had no choice but to return. Life doesn't stop for pain. Rent still comes. The fridge still empties. The bills still arrive with their sharp little threats. I had barely slept the night before. I woke up with a weight in my chest so heavy I had to sit on the edge of the bed for 10 minutes just to catch my breath. The boys were quiet too. They knew something was happening, even if I hadn't told them everything. Kids always know. They read your silences like stories. I walked into the hospital with my uniform ironed and my hair pulled back tight the way I always did. If I looked put together, maybe I could hold myself together. That was the lie I kept telling myself. That if I just kept moving, kept scrubbing, folding, disinfecting, I'd outrun the noise in my head. The East Wing was quiet that morning. A few patients discharged, a few new ones settling in. I pushed my cart down the hallway, hands clenched so tightly around the handle I could feel the tension pulsing through my forearms. My jaw ached from how hard I was clenching my teeth. That's when I saw her. Nurse Alana. She was tall, older than me, with silver streaks in her braids and the kind of eyes that had seen too much and still chose kindness. We'd worked together for years, but had never really spoken beyond passing hellos. She was respected, someone people didn't mess with. She carried herself with the kind of quiet authority you only earn through survival. She was coming out of room 407 when she saw me. At first, I thought she was going to walk right past me like everyone else had been doing lately. But she didn't. She stopped, looked right at me, and said, "You okay, baby?" It was the softness in her voice that broke me. Because no one had asked me that. Not really. Not since everything exploded. I opened my mouth to lie, to say I was fine, to smile and pretend. But I couldn't. My bottom lip trembled, and before I knew it, tears were sliding down my cheeks, hot and humiliating. Alana didn't flinch. She didn't look away. She just gently touched my arm and said, "Come with me." We walked in silence down the hallway and into the nurse's break room. She closed the door, turned off the buzzing light overhead, and sat me down. The hum of the mini fridge and the ticking of the wall clock were the only sounds. My breath was shallow, like I was still holding in years of air I never gave myself permission to exhale. She handed me a paper towel, not a tissue, not a napkin. Something practical, something real. And then she sat across from me and said nothing, just waited. Not impatient, not uncomfortable, just present. And in that space, with nothing but her gaze and the low hum of a room built for exhaustion, I started to talk. I don't remember everything I said. It came out in pieces, fragments. The motel, the glue, the years before that, the numbness, the shame, the humiliation, the silence, the letters, the court case, the way I sometimes stood in the shower and let the water run until it turned cold, because the sound drowned out the thoughts. She didn't interrupt. She didn't judge. She didn't look shocked. She just nodded, sometimes murmuring, like a lullaby. Like she'd heard this story before. Maybe not mine, but one close enough to know the rhythm of a woman breaking. And when I was done, when the tears dried and my hands finally stopped shaking, she leaned forward and said something I'll never forget. Let me guess. You thought you had to hold it all alone. I nodded. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folded brochure. It was for a local women's support group. Latina-led, discreet, free. They meet on Thursdays, she said. Nobody's there to fix you, just to listen. To remind you you ain't crazy, and you ain't alone. I stared at it for a long time. Not because I doubted it, but because I had forgotten what help even looked like. She patted my hand and added, "There's strength in talking, Eliane, but there's even more in being heard." That night, I went home and sat in bed holding the brochure. I didn't call right away. I wasn't ready, but for the first time, I didn't feel like I was drowning alone. Something about Alana's eyes, how steady they were, made me believe I hadn't ruined my life, that maybe I was just finally living it. A few days later, I did go to that meeting. I sat in a circle with women who looked nothing like me, and yet told pieces of my story in their own voices. Some had been married for decades. Others had just escaped. Some had bruises you could see. Others had ones you couldn't. And no one flinched. No one judged. When I said, I did something I never thought I'd do, they didn't ask for details. They didn't gasp. They just nodded. Like they knew. Like they'd been there. Even if not in that exact way. It was the first time in years I didn't feel insane. The first time I felt real again. These women didn't want to label me. They didn't want to fix me. They just wanted to hold space for my truth. And in doing that, they gave me something no one else had in a very long time. Permission. Permission to feel, to cry, to be angry, to laugh, to forgive myself, to begin again. And maybe that's where real healing starts, not in forgetting what happened, but in being allowed to speak it without fear of losing everything. If you've ever had someone look you in the eyes and say, "I believe you," you know how rare that is. If you've ever held your truth so tightly it burned your palms because you were scared of what would happen if you let it go, I want you to say something. Say it in the comments. I was never meant to carry this alone. Or, if you're still learning how to speak, just write, "I'm ready to be heard." Because healing doesn't happen in silence. It begins when someone finally listens. Rebuilding sounds like such a clean word, like something you do with your hands and a plan, a new coat of paint, a fresh start, but it's not like that. Not really. Not when the wreckage is inside of you. After that meeting, after I sat in a circle of strangers who didn't flinch when I told the ugliest part of my truth, I didn't wake up healed. I didn't suddenly become strong or whole or fearless. I didn't leap into a new life like some movie character rising from the ashes. No. I woke up the next day in the same bed, in the same tiny apartment, with the same worn-out pajamas and the same ache in my chest. But something was different. I wasn't drowning anymore. I was floating. Barely, but floating. And that was enough to begin. I started with small things. I cleared out drawers. I threw away clothes that held the scent of memories I didn't want anymore. I deleted pictures, not in anger, but in mourning, quiet mourning, grieving the woman I used to be, the version of me who believed that love was supposed to hurt if it was real. I changed the locks. That was the first real physical act of taking back my life. Standing there, watching the locksmith drill out the old cylinder, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Safety. Not because I knew he wouldn't come back, but because for once, I wasn't waiting for the sound of his key in the door. The kids adjusted in their own ways. Matthias started asking questions. Caio became clingier. I didn't have the perfect answers, but I promised them honesty. I told them, "Your dad and I aren't going to live together anymore. But I'm here. I'll always be here." We started building new routines. Dinner on the floor with pizza and movies. Long walks after school, even when I was tired. Laughing, real laughing, over burnt cookies and messy haircuts. I found parts of myself in those moments. I started writing again. Journaling. Just a few lines a day. Not poetry, not essays. Just fragments. Thoughts I had buried for so long, I didn't recognize my own voice when it came out. I wrote things like, "I am not what he called me. I deserve peace, even on days I feel like I don't. It's okay to be angry and healing at the same time." And slowly, something shifted. Not dramatically, not all at once, but in pieces. I said no for the first time without apologizing for it. I asked for help without feeling weak. I started saying what I wanted out loud, even if it was something small like, I want to sit alone tonight, or I don't want to explain myself. And that felt like a revolution. I went back to therapy. Real therapy. Not the kind where you lie and say everything's fine just to make it to the end of the session. But honest, messy, uncomfortable therapy where I had to admit things I wasn't proud of. Like how I still missed him some nights. Not the real him, but the version I had made up in my head. Or how sometimes I felt guilty for the glue incident. Not because I hurt him, but because I had let myself get to that point. My therapist, a woman named Clara, told me something that I wrote down in bold letters. Guilt is the echo of your old survival instincts. You're not bad, you were surviving. That helped. A lot. I stopped calling it the incident. I started calling it the moment I broke the cycle. That didn't erase the shame, but it gave it somewhere to go. It gave it context. I joined the support group every Thursday. Some weeks I talked, some weeks I just listened. But every week I felt less alone. There was power in being among women who didn't ask you to make your story prettier than it was. There was grace in being allowed to exist in whatever stage of healing you were in. Angry, numb, confused, joyful, all of it. I started making plans. Small ones at first. I wanted to save enough to get my own place. Not just a room in someone's basement with peeling paint and neighbors who argued through thin walls, but a home that felt like mine. I wanted to go back to school. Not for a degree, not yet, but a course. Something that was just for me. Just to remind myself I still had the capacity to grow, to learn, to dream again. I wanted to take the boys somewhere, even if it was just to the beach or the park or a new city on the bus. I wanted them to see their mother smiling in pictures, not forced smiles, not the kind you paste on to keep people from asking if you're okay, but real ones, the kind that come from deep inside, even if only for a moment. And slowly, I started to see her again, the woman I used to be before the fear, before the weight, before I learned to walk on eggshells in my own home. She wasn't fully back, but she was near, peeking through my laughter, humming while I did the dishes, smiling at myself in the mirror, even when my hair was messy and my eyes were tired. And I clung to her. I protected her, because I knew now how precious she was, how easy it was to lose her, and how hard it was to bring her back. If you're listening to this right now and you're somewhere between surviving and starting over, I see you. If you're folding laundry while holding back tears, if you're cooking dinner and trying not to fall apart, if you're smiling in public and screaming in silence at night, I want you to know this. Your healing does not have to be perfect. You don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to be fearless. You just have to keep going. Even if you're crawling, even if it's messy, even if the world doesn't understand, you are allowed to heal in your own way. And if you need to say it out loud just to remind yourself, drop it in the comments. I'm not broken, I'm rebuilding. Or, if you need something simpler, just write, I'm still here. Because sometimes those 3 words are the most powerful ones we can say. I wish I could tell you healing feels like light pouring in through a window, but sometimes it feels more like a question. Like standing in front of the mirror, staring into your own eyes and whispering, do I even know who I am without the pain? That's where I found myself, one quiet afternoon, folding laundry and feeling my own breath like a stranger's against my chest. I had been doing everything right. Therapy, journaling, community, parenting, working, breathing. But something in me still felt suspended. Like the ground I was walking on wasn't mine yet. Because healing doesn't erase the years that came before. It doesn't unlive the moments you survived. It doesn't delete the version of you that waited by the phone, that sat in silence through the nights he came home late smelling like shame and cologne. She still lives inside me, the woman I was. And now, as I begin to step into the woman I'm becoming, I find myself meeting her where she still sits. And I ask her, what do you need? What do you wish someone had said to you? And the answer is always the same. I just wanted someone to notice, not fix me, not save me, not analyze or judge or pity me. Just notice. Notice that I was shrinking, that I was walking smaller, speaking softer, asking for less, that I was disappearing in real time, behind the smile, behind the small talk, behind the perfect family photos that were all teeth and no truth. And now, I carry that awareness with me everywhere I go. I notice the women in line behind me at the pharmacy, the ones with tired eyes and bruises not on their skin, but in their voices. I notice the mother at the school gate who flinches when her phone buzzes. I notice the coworker who always says, "I'm fine," too fast, too quickly, too practiced, because I've been her, all of them. And I don't just see them now, I feel them. There's a grief we carry, us women who've lived in silence too long. It's a quiet kind of grief, the kind you hold in your belly, behind your ribs. It doesn't scream, it just lingers, like a room you never fully leave. But the beautiful, heartbreaking truth is this: we don't grieve what we never hoped for. We grieve because we once believed. We believed in love. We believed we mattered. We believed we'd be safe. And so, when the world showed us otherwise, the wound wasn't just physical, it was sacred. A betrayal not just of the body, but of the spirit. And yet, we are still here, still rising, still making meals, still brushing hair, still showing up, still choosing softness in a world that taught us to be steel, still whispering, "I'm okay," even when we're not, because somewhere deep down, we hope one day we will be. I think that's the part that gets overlooked in stories like mine. People get stuck in the drama, the motel, the glue, the hospital, the legal threats. They miss the truth that lives beneath all of it, that this story was never about revenge. It was about a woman remembering her worth, even if it looked messy, even if it came too late, even if the world refused to understand. Because survival is not always graceful. Sometimes it's loud, sometimes it's desperate, sometimes it's something you regret, and also, at the same time, something that saved your life. And now, when I sit with women who've walked through their own fire, we don't talk about the flames. We talk about what made us stay, what made us silent, what we told ourselves to keep going. I don't want to break my family. He's not always like that. He said he'll change. If I just stop complaining, and over again, maybe it's me, but it's not you. It never was. If you're listening to this, and you feel your heart beating a little faster right now, that's your body remembering. Remembering the lies you believed to survive, the masks you wore just to get through the day, the numbness you called peace. But we are allowed, fully, unapologetically, to want more, to expect more, to demand more, not just from others, but from ourselves. To look at the version of us that settled and say, "You did what you had to do, but I don't have to stay there anymore." So I'll ask you something now, and I don't want you to answer quickly. I want you to feel it in your bones. I want you to sit with it like an echo in an empty room. When was the last time someone really saw you? Not your job title. Not your role as wife, mother, sister, daughter. You. The you that gets scared at night. The you that feels too much and sometimes nothing at all. The you that wonders if she's still in there somewhere. Have you ever been truly seen? If the answer is no, or if it's been too long, I want you to write it in the comments. Write, "I want to be seen." And if you've ever dared to show up with your truth, no matter how messy or complicated or unrefined, write, "My truth matters." Because it does. And so do you. Healing doesn't come with applause. No one claps when you set boundaries. No one throws you a party the day you stop apologizing for who you are. No one sends flowers when you choose to leave instead of stay and endure just a little bit more. But I think that's what makes it so sacred, that it's quiet, that it's yours, that no one can take it from you, not your past, not your pain, not the people who couldn't or wouldn't see your worth. I didn't become someone new. I became someone real, the version of me that finally stopped whispering, "Please love me," and started saying, "I love myself enough to walk away." The version of me that still feels afraid sometimes, but chooses to keep going anyway. The version that no longer defines herself by what she survived, but by how she showed up afterward. I used to think strength looked like silence, endurance, tolerance, staying. Now I know better. Now I know strength looks like honesty. It looks like breaking down and still getting back up. It looks like laughing again, fully, freely, from your belly, and not wondering if you're allowed. It looks like looking in the mirror and not seeing a ghost. Just a woman. A full, Complicated, flawed, healing, radiant woman who earned every scar and still chose softness. The glue may have started this story, but it didn't end it. What ended was the silence, the guilt, the pretending. And what began was mine, my life, my voice, my story, told by me, not whispered by others who don't know the full truth. To the people who laughed at me, thank you. You reminded me I never needed the world's permission to reclaim my own narrative. To the people who judged me, thank you. You showed me how much more powerful it is to be misunderstood and honest than admired and silent. And to the people who listened, really listened, thank you. You gave me space to breathe. If you've made it this far in this story, I want you to know something. You are not weak for loving. You are not broken for staying longer than you should have. You are not crazy for how you survived. But you are powerful for choosing to keep going, for choosing yourself, for being here. So if this story touched something in you, something deep, something buried, something tender, I want to ask you for a few things. First, take a moment. Breathe. You're not alone. And if you feel safe, I'd love for you to leave a comment below with this sentence. I'm still healing, but I'm proud of how far I've come. Not just for me, but for every woman who might read it and realize she's not the only one holding pain like a secret. Drop a like if this story spoke to something inside of you. Not for numbers, not for the algorithm, but because every like tells the platform that these stories matter, that truth matters, that healing matters. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to this channel. Because here, we don't just share stories, we hold space for them. For women like you, for stories like yours, for pain that deserves to be named, and for victories, big or small, that deserve to be celebrated. And lastly, if you're ready to keep walking this journey with me, watch the next story that's appearing right now on your screen. I promise you, it's not just another video. It's a lifeline. It's someone else, like you, choosing to speak, choosing to rise, choosing to say, this is not the end, so stay with us. Thank you for being here. Thank you for surviving. Thank you for listening.